So I'm Mirjam van Vliet. That's Sonja, as was just introduced. And today our topic is on cultivating change fitness. And boy, are we learning this and practicing this very hard right in this moment. Because what we had organized was a very immersive workshop with no chairs. And you can see you're still sitting on them. So we're adapting as we speak. And I wanted to actually start with an opening quote. And this quote is actually by Sonja. And the quote is, "It's hard to survive in the jungle if you were trained in a zoo." And so the topic of the conference today is digital transformation, and it's quite broad. So in this workshop today, we really want to focus on AI as a shared lens. Not because it's the only change that's worth mentioning, but because picking a shared context in a very diverse group like this is quite hard. And AI, as the opening speaker made very aware, is here, it's right in our face. And you might be thinking, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? And just letting that trickle down a little bit. Lost my thought.
The jungle.
The jungle. So, before we get started, let's just do a little icebreaker. I can feel that I need it as well. And so, I just want to give you a little bit of an opening frame before this jungle exercise. Namely that if we look at this analogy of the jungle and the zoo, AI is not a zoo upgrade. It's a jungle drop-off. You know, all the rules that we knew are no longer valid, and we need to adapt. And so my question to you is, what's your default response when change hits you fast? In other words, when the safe zoo that you are, that you're used to becomes the jungle, what's your default response? And I just want you to show with your hands, and I'll give you a few options. So, is your default response to freeze? And just let me show with your hands, is that your default response to rapid, fast change? What about fidget? You stay busy, but you're not really sure what to do, so you don't act. Who is fidgety? And who likes to control? Who of you like to control? All right. And who of you like to move? In other words, move with change and adapt as you go. So today's exploration will be about adapting as you go. And you'll get to experience and get some jungle skills with a framework that Sonja has developed, and she'll talk a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Mirjam. I just want to ask the guys at the back if it's possible to get the slides up here, or is it not possible? Just so I can see what's coming. But I wanted to give you guys a tip, though, when you're asked a question like that. In complexity or in the jungle, the answer is always, it depends. Because sometimes I fidget and sometimes I control. But I think control is my dirty secret. So today the invitation is to become wayfinders, and you're going to learn what that means as we go along. But maybe where I want to start is, and linking back to the opening keynote, when we find ourselves in the jungle, it asks us to show up differently. And so instead of fidgeting and control and all of these things that we like so much, I want to invite you to hold a different stance, not just for the workshop, but for life, actually. I find this is what we need now almost every day. And I've got a cool acronym for it called COOL. And so I like to talk about being cool in complexity. And so COOL is an acronym, and it stands for courage. And this isn't bravery, these big acts of bravery. Sometimes courage can just be to admit when we don't know, to admit when we feel sad and we're a little bit scared about what's coming. The O is for openness, and this is openness to new things, openness to learning and unlearning, it's curiosity, it's openness to diversity, diverse perspectives, people who see the world differently. And then the second O is for observing. It's slightly different, it's a verb. But this is about noticing. Noticing when things change in the external context. So it's observing patterns, observing signals, but also observing what's happening inside when that change is happening. Do I feel triggered? What's going on? So it's becoming curious about what you're noticing and what's going on inside. And then lastly, lightness. And lightness is about not taking things too seriously, including yourself. It's about being playful. You know, we use the language of play, but we don't really play. We say we play with the numbers, but we don't really. So this is an invitation to step into, I think John spoke about fascination, and to be playful with things. And so I want to invite you to be cool, as we are also finding our way around the chairs. So we'll see what happens. So I want to introduce you to a model that really helps me think about how change happens. You know, and change is something that we all have in common, but we don't often think about how it works. And it might look a little bit linear on screen, but I think we all know that change does not unfold in linear ways. And so Virginia Satir, she was a family therapist. This is her model. And she has on the side there performance, but I actually prefer the word functioning. Because sometimes when we're in disruptive change, we struggle to function. So I've relabeled that vertical axis functioning, and then the horizontal axis is time. But the really interesting thing here is it starts with a status quo. And then what gets introduced is what she called a foreign element. So for us, the chairs was a foreign element. It's like we had everything planned, and then there was a foreign element, which we didn't manage to resist. So we were in a small time of chaos, and then we had a transforming idea, and then we hopefully emerged the other side. But now think about the opening keynote and AI, and how many foreign elements it is introducing, sometimes daily. We don't have the luxury of dealing with one foreign element at a time. They're coming at us from everywhere. And so that chaotic phase, which is kind of where, you know, John spoke about it as well this morning, it's where the past is no longer available, it's fading, but the future hasn't completely emerged yet. We're in this liminal, messy space where we don't know what the rules are, we don't know what's going on, and it feels chaotic. And we're not dealing with one piece of chaos either. It's layered, because there are all of these foreign elements. And so what we're going to be introducing today are what we believe to be some transforming ideas and a framework that can help you when you're suddenly dumped into chaos. Or, you know, I believe nowadays our status quo is actually quite, I don't really like the word chaos, but it is deeply complex. There are very few areas where things are just simple and predictable. We're kind of not in the zoo anymore. You know, it's like we're not in Kansas anymore, comes to mind. And so technology creates multiple foreign elements. And you know, AI is not something that we can manage. It's not something that we adopt. It really is a wild environment that we need to navigate and find our way through in real time. And it is changing the entire context, not just the technological landscape. And so that's why we chose this as a topic for today. So 3 transforming ideas, and then from there, I'm going to stop talking, and then it's going to be you guys navigating the chairs. So the first, jungles are complex. So you heard that word already this morning. Jungles aren't complicated. Zoos are complicated, predictable environments. Jungles are complex, and what that means, they're open. So they're open to external influence. They're filled with diversity, and they are relationally entangled. Everything is connected to everything else. So think of a zoo. The way that it's set up, the cages, it keeps things apart. There's diversity, but not typically in the same enclosure. Now, human systems, what do you think? Are they more like zoos or more like jungles? Jungles. They used to be a bit more like zoos. We're still structured a little bit like zoos, but then the jungle just gets inside the enclosures, or the politics and the things. And so it's dynamic, and it's alive, and it's filled with change. And that is, I think, one of the key messages that we want to land is, it's the change that brings the aliveness. If the change had to stop, that living system would no longer be alive. And so we tend to resist change, and we see it as something that's negative almost, but actually change is life.
Yeah, I would say it's the life force of the jungle, yeah.
Yes. There we go. The second one, and it's linked. Change is the primary organizing principle. So I'm going to give you a quote to just read. This is by Robert Chia. I love his work. He's doing some really, really interesting work in change. And he says, change must not be thought of as a property of organizing. So we tend to think that organizations are stable, stability is normal, and then change gets introduced. Basically, what he says is organizing or organization must be understood as an emergent property of change. And so one of the analogies he uses is, if you think of a river and the water is continuously flowing, every now and again there's like an eddy that forms, there's a pattern. And so there's this stable organization that forms, and then it dissolves again. And so change really is the only constant. I think, I don't know who said that, but it's long ago. And so if we think about it like that, then we can kind of stop resisting when change gets introduced. And so the invitation here is to become ways finders, and that S there is on purpose. Because when we're in complexity and when we're in so much uncertainty, when everything becomes uncertain, anything becomes possible. So there's always multiple ways to find. And what is way finding or ways finding? It's knowing as you go, not before you go. Now, if you think about, again, the opening keynote and the two differences between the team of today and the team of, I can't remember the...
Tomorrow.
Yeah. We come from a world where we want to plan. We want to know something will work before we try it. How many of you have been hit by that question or asked the question, where have you tried this before? How do we know this will work? That is, I want to know before I go. Wayfinding is making the path by walking. And that is what I believe we need to do now in the world of AI. And so I want to introduce you to a framework. It's a scaffolding. I'm going to keep it really simple because you're going to work with it. And it is actually a very simple framework. We don't need complicated tools in complexity. We actually need simple scaffolds. And so essentially where this starts is we map the current reality. And we have some handouts for you, so you will have this. But the idea is if everything is continuously changing, so if there are foreign elements introduced virtually daily, we can't assume that we know where we are, because everything is changing. So we start with where are we? We orient. Then we set direction. So where do we feel we want to head towards? And we can't set goals because we can't predict. But we can determine what is a direction that feels like there's potential. Once we've done that, we create guardrails. And sometimes this is the one that we miss. Because I don't know about you, but if I don't know where the boundaries are, if I don't know where the edges are, I don't feel safe to explore. I kind of stay where I know it's safe. Children are like that. It's just a very human thing. So if we can determine where are the boundaries, and there are two kinds of guardrails. The first one is we need to acknowledge or set limits. And very often this is imposed from outside. So for us, the chair's right now a limit. We can't change it. There are many things in the regulatory contexts. There are many things that we actually can't change. We have to work within them. Even if we're going through personal, individual change, a friend of mine uses the framework to navigate chronic illness. She used to be a mountain climber. Her body has imposed a limit. But what can we still do? So this limit is not there to stop you from doing things. It's basically I acknowledge it's there. What can I do, sometimes even because of it? The other guardrail is something that we choose. So how, if I only had the one guardrail, everything was still available to me. There would be too many options. What do I choose to focus on? Maybe this is based on values. Maybe there are some things that's so important to me, I'm willing to exclude some options because of that value. So what I've created now is a contained option field, because within this I can explore. And the invitation this morning was we need to become explorers. So we've created a safe environment for us to explore. So within this, we can do safe-to-fail experiments, we can try different things, see what works. And then the final bit here is feedback. Because the moment you take a step, everything changes. And everything is still changing in the context. So it's a continuous orienting process. So you literally make the path by walking. And then the last slide, and it's very busy, and it's what we gave you. Sometimes, when things are really, when you're in the deep jungle, when things are really disruptively changing, it's difficult to find direction because everything feels confusing and they're in the mist. And if people ask you then, where do you want to go? It's like, I have absolutely no idea. When that happens, you shift to the guardrails, so you park direction for a while, and the wedge becomes a circle. It's like a radar. So from where I am, within my guardrails, I'm going to experiment in multiple directions and see if I can find anything that feels alive. And when I do, I can revert to the wedge. I hope this makes sense. I went through it very fast. But what we're going to do is give you an opportunity to work with this. And because this is a conference context, and it's really difficult to find a deeply shared context, we're going to work individually. Like, what is your current relationship with AI? Where are you? And what are your guardrails? And what feels like a direction for you? But then we're going to share it in groups. But just so that you know, this framework, you can use it in teams. I've got one of the biggest banks in Brazil is using it for strategy. So we're using it individually just so that you can get your feet wet. But it really is a framework you can use to create change fitness in an organization. So are you ready to try? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Born ready. So, individual reflection. So you're going to sit for a while quietly. We're going to give you 2 minutes to go through each of those questions. So the first one, describe your current state in relation to AI. What's your current orientation to it? Where are you now? What's happening in your team, your organization? Just jot down for 2 minutes, current state of your relationship with AI. Okay, next question. So we're going to go to the first guardrail first, because sometimes that is very closely related to the current state. So where can't you go? So in the present, almost like, what are the hard limits that you need to work within? These could be imposed by your company. It could just be something in your life. It could be non-negotiable values. So what can't you compromise? What risks can't you take? And what are you potentially not allowed to do? So these are things that you have no control over really, except maybe I have a non-negotiable value that's got to do with something around ethics, and that's going to shape my relationship with AI. 2 minutes.
Sonja, for like jungle skills, it is really, really quiet in here. Eh?
That's going to change very soon. Time up. So now we move to sense of direction. Where are you going? And so I'm going to give you the next two together, because you may be in the circle, not the wedge. So this one, what feels alive and filled with potential? And remember, this is not a goal. So you can say, I feel like I need to learn 3 new AI tools. That would be a goal. This is more around like why? What is the direction you want to steer into in your relationship with AI? And if it feels completely unclear at the moment, that's perfectly fine. Then you move to, what are the focus boundaries you're choosing? And so here, you can think about things like, what is in and what is out? What do I feel like